And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Two Schmoes Show. The only show on the internet where I'm so used to my work computer that I try to shove things off to another monitor when I'm only using a laptop to record this. Hate that feeling.
Oh man, I know that feeling so well. It's not fun.
No, it's like a phantom monitor. Yeah, so apparently if you get your limbs cut off, you still can feel them for a while because your brain hasn't digested it properly. That's what it's like, phantom limb syndrome.
I was listening to a really interesting conversation. This is completely off topic of what we had planned for today, but talking about on the WAN show, Linus Tech Trips, recently, about technology that they were surprised hadn't been developed more fully yet. And one of the things that they brought up was AR.
Yes, I am a proud proponent of AR. Go on.
Yeah, it is so wild that there's not a consumer type product like Google Glass was. But, better, because Google Glass is more than a decade old at this point. Just something that it would exist out there as an alternative to have basic AR stuff. You don't need 15 monitors if you can put, little screens on your glasses and use that instead. Shit like that. That would be just genuinely really useful in a day-to-day purpose that just doesn't exist now.
I'm all for that. You know what was really cool with AR technology? So the Nintendo 3DS had this really cool little gimmick. You can tell they wanted to do something with AR with the 3DS, but they kind of chickened out on it. It was this little built-in AR game. It's tech demo all the way, but you get these little cards, right? And you place these cards anywhere, and your 3DS would register them like a QR code almost. And then from that, it would open up an AR interface through your camera of your 3DS. And there'd be little shooter things you can do, shoot 'em ups. They would let you pose characters for photos in augmented reality. It honestly reminds me a lot of how Pokemon Go kind of works in a sense. Without that GPS technology. What the fuck is our problem with this? Why are we investing so much in the metaverse and VR when AR is the cooler shit, in my opinion?
The Vita had almost the exact same thing too.
It was
the only thing that its camera got used for was to, in the future, support AR stuff. I remember it had a little mini games where you could put food boxes on your table and use that to mimic obstacles in games. And they just never did anything with it. It never went anywhere. And it feels like because these companies got so hooked on this VR crap that barely works because obvious technical limitations, they just completely scrapped any other idea.
Yeah.
Who would have guessed that 2D is easier than 3D?
Honestly, I still think we can salvage AR. AR is one of those technologies that we can develop it pretty easily, all things considered. Because it's still fairly infant, in its infancy. Did you ever hear about Kid Icarus Uprising?
It sounds familiar, but no, I'm not exactly sure.
So, Nintendo game.
Yeah.
It's a Sakurai game, so you know it's good. They made 400 AR cards for it of characters, enemies, and weapons.
400, wow.
400. And that's basically, you can use your 3DS camera to do a Yu-Gi-Oh style showdown where the AR shows the battle out as you play the game. That was associated with it. So imagine just putting your card right in front of the camera, and then you can see all the animations as you select your turn, turn order and commands.
Yeah.
That was really cool. I'm really upset we never got anything about that. But c'est la vie, as the French say. So, yeah. AR, please sponsor us. We'll gladly do that.
Yeah, it'd be really cool. I remember there was a interesting a Webtoons webcomic that I used to follow that had AR as a consumer product being just a piece of flavor that they had about the world that they had for the sci-fi story, where it was just a commodity thing that you could have, that you could, like, you know, if you wanted to, you just throw the glasses on and, you know, you could, you know, appear to have like a hat on or some shit like that, right?
You
Like
know,
the same ideas, like character skins in video games, just
we
shit like that. It'd
we
be so cool.
we were fucking developing wearable tech around the same time as all this AR like experiments was going on. How
Oh
did
yeah,
we miss this? This is like money in
yeah,
the bag.
it should be.
Yeah.
I think a big problem with it came about with, like, when you look at VR headsets,
Yo.
right?
Mhm.
They are big and bulky for the ones that have their built-in processing. I have to imagine that that comes to be part of the problem, where the way that the current tech, I don't even want to call it the tech sector, approaches problem solving doesn't functionally support something. Not that you can't imagine a way to do it, just that the people who in charge can't.
Yeah.
It's, you know, like the old guard kind of thing, where they want a product they can sell. I hope, this is weird, I hope that the proliferation of like Bluetooth earbuds helps to push that kind of stuff along. Stuff that functions as an accessory to something else rather than a standalone product. Just something.
Yeah.
I don't want Apple to make VR. I want them to make AR, because then people would have to follow the trend.
I can think of so many things that'd be cool. I
Mm-hmm.
just found this out apparently at the Nintendo World Store in New York. There's a fucking giant AR card of like Link from The Legend of Zelda. That if you take your DS in there and scan it, it makes a giant fucking statue that you can see in the store through your DS. That is fucking cool.
That is just neat.
Yeah. I can imagine like museums doing this shit. Imagine, if you will, just going to a museum and you don't need to like go stand in front of a plaque to read something. You can just have AR display what you can read about it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
More augmented tech. That's the lesson for today. You know, we should get a bank loan, Chiral, so we can start up this by ourselves. I hope nothing out characteristic and wacky is happening right now in the world of banking.
No, the world of banking is it's solid and stable. Nothing bad is happening, and we should all be putting all of our money in as many banks as possible, because there's no risk.
I mean, if you're like us and you're poor, yeah.
Yeah. There was I don't even know which one to start. Let's start with the US one, because that's the more directly tied to what we talked about last week with the SVB bank collapse. So following SVB's closure, they have since been, like, it's all pretty much officially happened, where the federal government has basically seized the company at this point and is starting to sell off its assets in order to secure depositors' funds at the expense of shareholders, which, you know, that's how it should be. You backed an insolvent bank, and you're losing your money now.
Mm-hmm.
Because that is capitalism, and that's how it should work. But it has caused other similarly sized banks to panic a bit. In a way, the way that they are presenting this does not evoke confidence. Where a statement came out from the Mid-Sized Bank Coalition of America, representing, oh, who would have guessed, a coalition of mid-sized US banks, where they have asked regulators to extend the FDIC insurance to cover all deposits for the next 2 years. In this letter, they argue that extending insurance will immediately stop the exodus of deposits from smaller banks, in turn stabilizing the banking sector and restoring confidence in banking systems. The gist of this being that the FDIC only covers deposits of up to $250,000. So if you currently bank with one of these mid or small size banks and have deposits of greater than $250,000, which isn't that uncommon at a certain point once you start to look at like retirement accounts.
Yeah.
People are moving that money away from these smaller banks over to the large banks, with the idea being that should everything go horribly, horribly wrong, the bigger banks are going to be the ones that are more likely to see an actual bailout if that is needed.
God, it feels like 2008 again. We just said bailout and banks in the in the sentence again.
Yeah, yeah, it kind of does. As far as anything I've been able to see can tell, the actual, this is like the big question, right? As long as these banks haven't been doing anything risky or improperly and not been disclosing it properly, everything should be fine. Because banks have never been improper about disclosing their risks or how they're managing their funds in the past. That's never happened. And if banks were, they definitely wouldn't be asking for additional protection from the federal government ahead of time to make sure that they don't go completely under if the worst comes around.
We just have the
That wouldn't
worst people in
happen.
charge. What's up?
That wouldn't happen. Rampant mismanagement in the banking sector. No, no, no. All those people got carted off to jail in 2008, remember?
Yeah.
Or sorry, all that person,
All that
the
person.
one guy, there was literally one guy.
That guy that fucked it up for the rest of us? Fuck that guy.
Not even. It was I'd have to look into it again, but it was like how a lot of this shit goes, where he got charged for something unrelated, like lying to the FBI or something like that.
Reminds me
Um,
of like when they tried holding Schneider accountable for Flint, and then someone else
yeah,
just like
right.
took the fall.
Pretty much. So jumping back to this proposal made by the Mid-sized Bank Coalition of America, hopefully this it's mixed, right? Because in their proposal, this group has said that if the FDIC insurance program was expanded, that the banks would pay for it by increasing the deposit insurance assessment on lenders that choose to participate in increased coverage. And that's not. It's weird, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that is how it should be, but at the same time, the FDIC was created to promote consumer confidence at an individual level in banking to prevent bank runs. As far as I know, the intent was never for that to extend to a corporate level. And that seems to be where the big problem is coming in with these mid-sized banks, that their corporate holdings are where they're running into problems, and the bank runs that are happening aren't happening by individuals because their deposits are already insured.
Mm-hmm.
So it's easy to see both sides of this one, honestly. And I'm not sure where I fall on it. You don't want to reward these banks for mismanagement by insuring their deposits to a greater extent and have them remain solvent should a collapse happen. But at the same time, you don't want businesses, who ultimately are the people with their money deposited in these banks, to also go under should those banks collapse. You don't want another Great Depression, right?
Great Depression 2. Greater Depression.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, it's absolutely shit. And unless they were to like provide more consequences on behalf of the banks for those bailouts or for like those greater insurances, I don't see like any way it's a win-win. And by a win-win, I mean for normal people.
Mm-hmm.
What you looking at there, friendo?
Oh, Sorry, I couldn't hear you for a second there. I think it cut out weirdly.
Really? That's
Yeah.
strange. It's been a long time since we had like tech problems like that.
Yeah. Um.
I was basically saying if there was way for like penalties to be more
mm,
stringent on the banks themselves for requiring this
yep.
additional assistance.
Yep.
That
Yep.
way, we could, not have them like lean on us too hard with the risk
hmm
of, a Great Depression along the way if we don't assist.
Yep. I think that the stock market kind of ruined a lot of that. Whereas historically, if you ran a company or were an executive of a senior position of a company, you were the only one with stakes invested in it. And if the company failed, you as an individual basically also failed. And having the stock market kind of distribute that risk and failure has also kind of thinned out the ultimate consequences of that happening.
Yeah, that's a really good assessment right there. Damn, Kyril, how'd you get so educated?
I went to Olivet
Oh
College.
shit, that's a great segue to the story, but I don't know if we should get onto that one.
No, I want to talk about the bigger bank news happening outside of US borders. Just like within the last hour, this has happened.
Go on.
There's been talks for a while about the Swiss bank Credit Suisse, who has long been one of the major financial players. They were a major player in the 2008 bank collapses, crises that were happening then. And they are, was it 46th, 45th largest bank in the world. There's been a lot of talk for a while now. It's been, I think, a couple of months of the risk of that bank failing due almost exclusively to rampant mismanagement, where the people running Credit Suisse have just absolutely failed without there's no other way to put it. They just fucked up. And to a degree now that there's no coming back from it. And the question, when you have a bank of this scale that's going to on the risk of, going over the edge, is what happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because with a bank, they're inherently tied up in a lot of industries and a lot of different, debtors. In this case, the other large bank of Switzerland is UBS. I had to look this up because I could not figure out what it stood for. It is the Union Bank of Switzerland. Very creative and original. They are the 34th largest bank in the world. And the long understanding would be that if Credit Suisse was to go under, UBS would be brokered by the Swiss government to purchase Credit Suisse. And as of today, that has happened. UBS purchased Credit Suisse at a price of 54 cents per share, about. They will take control of all of Credit Suisse's assets. And in addition, the Swiss National Bank has offered a $100 billion liquidity line to Credit Suisse as part of the deal. So for now, it seems that the two will remain operating relatively independently for the time being. But for UBS, the actual stock price of Credit Suisse is, I have to convert this because it's in francs. $2, please. Oh, thank you, Google. That's very helpful. 0.82. $2. So they paid 50, what does that work out to? 26 cents on the dollar for each of these shares.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. And that was the large this is about double of what they wanted to. That was the news that I was reading a couple of days ago, was that UBS made an offer that was half this, and it was turned down. So the $2 billion was the net sale on this, and Credit Suisse is going to be rolling into UBS. 34th, as I said, 34th largest bank in the world, purchasing the 45th largest. It is the equivalent of Morgan Stanley purchasing the Bank of Australia.
When you like expand it out like that, it's just a silly ass comment, but I love the way that metaphor works.
Yeah. And it's like within a few percentage points, it lines up. It's massive scale of this transfer happening. It's big enough that when I was looking this up before, on the list of the 100 largest banks of the world, SVB, the Silicon Valley Bank, doesn't even show up.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So that's the scale we're talking about here. This is significantly larger than what is happening in the US banks right now. But it's happening for completely separate reasons. I think that does need to be stressed, is that the SVB collapse and Credit Suisse being rolled into UBS, while both are a result of some level of mismanagement, it doesn't yet appear to be anything systemic. These are just poorly managed businesses that happen to be collapsing at the same time.
I mean,
And because bank collapse are relatively rare, it's quite noteworthy.
I think there is a lot of like market for these kind of stories. And I think there is a lot of people who feel validated about their own beliefs based off this, even though they're, they want to see a pattern to validate their own beliefs at this point.
Those moments, this is completely off topic. I'm just skimming through this top banks thing. This is a big, but in particularly Korea and Japan, how they have like 4 companies that kind of own everything in the same way that like GE does here.
Yeah.
And you don't really think about it until you see their name pop up on something and you're just like, wait a minute. That, whatever company name, you're like, that Samsung, the same that they make phones? The 6th largest bank in the world is the Mitsubishi UFJ Financial Group. Yes, that Mitsubishi.
That Mitsubishi.
Yeah.
Whew.
It's probably like, divided and split up and shit, but it all ties back together.
That makes so much sense.
Same way that Mitsubishi made Japanese Zeros, GE makes machine guns. That's how our world works.
Why sell it? Why dump yourself in one market when you're going to shove yourself into a million other markets as well?
Yeah. Pretty much. I'm curious now. I'm scanning to see where the Korean banks on here are. No, it doesn't look like it. No, nothing under the name. There's no Samsung Bank of Korea or something like that. Although I'm sure if you actually look under the hood, there's some pretty strong connections just under different names. Yeah, it's pretty scary.
Yeah.
We have to, at this point, we have to pretty much hope that these mismanagement problems that have been occurring are isolated. And if they're not, personally, I'm pretty sure it's the same for both of us. We're young enough that we haven't had time to make that kind of money yet, and we'd be fine. But I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that pretty much everybody knows somebody who's like close to retirement that would probably get pretty fucked over if there was a more systemic bank collapse right now.
I definitely think so. I could imagine a couple people. Of course, these are like grandparents and whatnot, or elder relatives. So, yeah. But it does please me to see the boomers finally get their own comeuppance.
I don't know. This isn't the way I want it to happen, though, right? Like, I very much want that to happen at some point, but having it be through absolute financial ruin seems
Overkill?
a bit harsh.
Yeah.
I'd rather they just have to sit there and languish as we undo decades of mismanagement that they have caused since the 60s and 80s.
Oh, so the 70s get a pass? So do the
I
90s?
want 70s were all right.
Okay.
Who's even the president in the 70s?
Uh, let's look that up,
Oh no,
shall we?
wait, no, that was Nixon. Oh, but Carter was at the end of the 70s, so that counts.
And there's Ford just in the middle.
Been rewatching some of the old episodes of Futurama, and they have some really good jokes in there, jabbing at people like Gerald Ford.
Good. It just amazes me because, like, Reagan really was the whole 80s, wasn't he?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much exactly. It was like 81 to 89
Yeah,
was
that's
Reagan.
just not fair.
No. Speaking of not fair, no, not really. The ICC, the International Criminal Court, I believe, has officially announced criminal charges for Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Oh, and here I thought it would be a different Russian president. Good.
ICC has accused Putin of committing war crimes in Ukraine since both the who was it? Some senior, it wasn't their prime minister, I don't think. Maybe it was like Secretary of Defense, but a very senior official in Germany and U.S. President Biden have both announced welcoming this news and have announced support for it. Um, at the same time, this is very uncharted grounds. A major world leader has never been criminally charged by the International Criminal Court, and it is not known how this would ever effectively play out should they travel to a country that supports enforcement of these charges, whether they legally can or not. It's very murky.
I'd say I would hate to be the country where they would enforce that because you're putting a fucking hit on your head the moment you try to enforce that.
Oh, absolutely. And it's hard though, right? That's one of the main problems that the reason that uh, W. Bush didn't sign on to certain international accords that were going around when he was president, because the idea was that if they agreed to them, they would have to extradite their own soldiers out of the U.S. to basically The Hague, and they didn't want to do that.
Yes.
I believe that it was the International Criminal Court like conception that the US did not sign on to, which is not good because we very well know our soldiers have done atrocities, at the very least in the Middle East.
Did I just hear something un-American come out of your mouth?
Mm.
I'm sorry, Kyril. I need like 50 hail. What's the thing Catholics pray to? Like
I think it's a Hail Marys.
that's what I thought. I'm gonna need
Yeah.
like 50 Hail Marys, but instead of like praying to God for forgiveness, you got to pray to
Yeah.
Reagan.
It's been very interesting with the Oscars having just happened. Also brings up past Oscars controversies. And one that was making the rounds this week was Michael Moore's speech after winning the Oscars for Bowling for Columbine, like 2004, I think, where in his speech he condemned the war in Iraq
I remember
and
that.
was met with a very substantial number of people booing him for it. And in hindsight, he got it pretty right, but at the time, people were very much against him.
What was that for? What's that meme? They hated Jesus because he spoke the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, say what you want about Michael Moore kind of being like a shitty person when he's got a strong opinion. He was fucking
Mm-hmm.
right.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. It's really interesting to see how many celebrities at that time period had never had their careers really recover following any sort of disagreement with the Iraq War having happened. You know, Michael Moore, Dixie Chicks. It's a very unpleasant time to look back on, seeing how they were treated in the U.S. for their opinions.
Yeah, I'm trying to see what Michael Moore's done for a hot minute. Because what?
It's not been much.
No.
He's been working, but never to the level of notoriety that he had.
Which I think is a shame.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he's an
He's a
interesting
very
filmmaker.
talented, a very talented filmmaker for sure.
Yeah. Huh.
I think what the last one that I saw of his was.
I remember Where to Evade Next. That was like a big one when we were in
Mm-hmm.
college.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where was I at here? Yes. So yeah, Putin's been charged. How that's going to play out, nobody really knows. And in a similar vein, former President Trump is also claiming that he will be charged and or arrested around Tuesday of this coming week.
Can we get like a counter for that, Jamie?
I wish. That'd be
Uh,
very good.
count down to Wednesday. Okay. Please, onlineclock.com. We are at 2 days, 8 hours, 18 minutes, and 55 seconds before such a prophecy can no longer happen. And you know what? I think I might just add this to the video real quick. Nah. Too much work. I don't want to like corrupt it. Okay, go on, Cairo. What seems to be the charges in this case?
Nobody knows
Nobody
because
knows.
they haven't been filed yet. Also, we do roughly know. We can assume that this is going to be related to the case that has been going on in New York, specifically related to the charges that were brought against Michael Cohen for campaign finance violations with regard to payments made to Stormy Daniels in the run up to the 2016 election. Basically, hush money payments, which in and of themselves are not illegal. But what was revealed as part of the Cohen investigation was that it seems some amount of the money given to Daniels came from campaign finances in a way that may have been conducted illegally. Michael Cohen was charged about a year ago, I want to say now, for being the person who directly handled those transactions on Trump's behalf. And if charges are coming for Trump, it is believed that those would be related to how other financial handlings would have happened as it relates to Trump's companies specifically, rather than Cohen's working on Trump's behalf more generally.
Mm-hmm.
The side of it that so the way that we know about this is that Trump himself put out a pair of messages on Truth Social saying as much. Beyond that, the it'd be the Attorney General of New York. I'm not actually sure. I guess it would be the city of New York or the state of New York.
I think it has to be
It
the
is
AG.
it is not very clear. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office declines to comment on whether it will soon be pursuing an arrest warrant for Trump.
Well, yeah, they can't let him know when they're coming.
Yep. Um, the concerning piece of this is that as part of Trump's declaration that this is apparently going to happen, he also called for his followers to start protesting in a way that is very reminiscent of the events of January 6th.
Of course.
Because, of course, right?
Yeah, I remember January 6th pretty well. Do you, Kyril?
Yes,
Yeah.
quite.
That was a weird day. Like, do you ever, like, stop to think about, like, the whole 2020 to 2021 time of your life? And, like, think of it as, like, just one weird fever dream at this point?
I wish. It's, you know,
I felt really awful, man. Like,
yeah.
because like I look back at it now and it feels like a dream to me. Like none of this sounds like it should have been real, especially with like now that everything has gone to hashtag
Mm-hmm.
normal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
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 And now I think of those days and I'm like, why couldn't I just acknowledge how fucking weird? I think I was really in denial for a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when the fucking Capitol got raided.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it is very easy to just sort of like dissociate because it is so bizarre.
It's one of those things you can't really fully think of unless you've been to the Capitol.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, man. It's just blows my fucking mind how all that was happening in the span of like a year.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
As a bit of a treat, so to say, for, eerily similar calls for protest echoing January 6th, we also had Trump declare himself the former president of the United States. So that was nice.
Can we pull up the full like arrest thing?
Here,
Like
I
his
will send it over
announcements?
to you.
Please.
He had, I don't know, he put it as page 2. I think he means part 2, but he's not exactly, he all capsed it all as well, and there's multiple typos and bad grammar and shit, so like it's all bad.
I'm sorry. I'm laughing at
But
the engagement on it. These are
oh yeah,
weak
it's
numbers.
pitiful.
Yeah.
It is. I have literally seen better numbers on like YouTube shit posts.
I guarantee I could probably pull up Twitter and I can find a tweet in like less than a minute
Mm-hmm.
with better numbers.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Elon is getting better numbers, which is sad. Let's see here. I'm going to read this very distinguished as I think our former president would want it to be read.
Yep. I sent him in the wrong order, but yeah.
No worries. I just feel like we need to address this because these are fucking hilarious and golden.
Oh yeah, it's wild.
From the official, what is this, Truth Social of Donald J. Trump?
Yep, this is his official True Social.
It's time! 3 exclamation marks. We are a nation in steep decline, being led into World War III by a crooked politician who doesn't even know he's alive, but who is surrounded by evil and sinister people who, I'm sorry, based on their actions on defunding the police, destroying our military, open borders, no voter ID, inflation, rising taxes, and much more, can only hate our now failing USA. What the fuck does any of that mean?
Good question.
Because you see that too, right? That's all one sentence.
Oh yeah, no, it is the peak of nonsense, the absolute pinnacle of rambling.
It's like 3 sentences smushed together, and then like they don't end like as a sentence should. They just kind of like go into the next one before like the thought is finished.
Yep. It has honestly been really refreshing seeing so many of his statements being forced by just the inherent limitations of Truth Social being in text, because there's no even attempt to try and make it sound resembling anything coherent
I will
that
give
he
him
would do if
this.
he was like filming it.
He is a very good speaker. Very good, very talented,
Oh
very
yeah.
charismatic. That he can
He
say,
talks out of his ass like no one.
yeah, yeah. Like he definitely says it with confidence that you think he's saying something.
Mm-hmm.
But then you get like this. I wouldn't be surprised if he did this with text to speech programs.
I was
Speech to text.
actually just about to mention something similar. So
Yeah.
you know how we've had like Chat GPT 3 and they had Chat GPT 4 got announced this week.
Yes.
And they always have the problem where if you ask them something and it lies to you, it does so with absolute confidence. It is confidently
Yes.
incorrect. I learned that apparently people who work with these programs regularly, when that happens, they describe it as the program hallucinating.
That's beautiful.
And it is very accurate to represent a lot of Trump's statements as being the product of hallucinations.
We just can't allow this anymore. They're killing our nation as we sit back and watch. We must save America. Protest, protest, protest. Page 2. Now illegal leaks from a corrupt and highly political Manhattan District Attorney's Office, which has allowed new records to be set in violent crime and whose leader, that's the wrong whose, is funded by George Soros, indicate that with no crime being able to be proven and based on an old debunked by numerous other prosecutors, exclamation mark, um, fairy tale, the far and away leading Republican candidate and former president of the United States of America will be arrested on Tuesday of next week. Protest. Take our nation back.
Worth noting, he only has a 4 point lead over DeSantis in early polls right now.
Are you fucking kidding me?
40-36, last I saw.
That's so funny. I don't want
Yeah.
DeSantis to get the nom, but this is also pleasing me.
Man, it's going to be in like the way that watching cars crash can be very interesting. The 2024 presidential race is going to be very interesting.
Dude, we're like in the negative pre-show right now, and I'm already sick of it.
I know. It's going to be wild. I am very curious to see just how it'll be the absolute acid test for how divided the Republican Party is.
Oh, dude, look at those DeSantis Trump polls. They already
Yeah.
are divided.
Well, yeah, only one of them can get the nom, though.
Yeah.
And after that happens, it's like, what then? Right?
What do?
What do?
Who do you think is going to get the nom?
I wouldn't be. It's very hard to say, you know? If I had to guess, I would probably say DeSantis just for the not Trump factor.
Yes. Okay. You want to hear my prediction? I'm about to put my
Oh, yeah,
prediction down for
please.
the 2024 election.
Yep.
This is my all things go wrong prediction. So, Donnie is going to get arrested, or something
Yep.
about it is he's not going to be able to complete his campaign. So it
Yeah.
defaults to DeSantis. DeSantis is going to run one hell of a fear mongering campaign, as DeSantis do.
Yeah. On brand.
Yep. Um, this is where people start shitting their pants because I am predicting Biden will do another run
Oh,
for what's up?
I hope not. Man,
I don't I'm
don't want that
upset
to
because
happen.
I don't want it to happen either. But if he fucking runs, people are going to go running to DeSantis. And I'm not talking about like people like you and I who know what fucking DeSantis is all about. I'm talking about your average Joe who doesn't, who kind of knows the Biden administration was nice at the beginning of COVID, but it kind of lost steam a little while ago. Because let's face it, Joe's done some nice things, but he's not exactly of the people. And if
Yeah,
you
for sure. He like by any objective measure, he's had a very successful presidency.
yeah,
And there's another year and a half of it to go. Closer to 2 years, honestly. But yeah, people tend not to vote objectively. So
exactly. I'm I'm not saying it, but I'm saying this is my worst case scenario. In which case, I think DeSantis could win it if Biden decided to run again, because we all know the Democratic nom would go back to Biden by default because fucking Dems the brakes. Get it?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That was a good pun. Thank you, Corey. You're welcome, Corey. Oh, I mean, Ryan.
No.
Regardless, that is my terrible theory of what would happen.
The main thing that I have right now that's like troubling is that the I don't even. We'll have to. It's going to be a bloodbath in the primaries, right?
Oh, hell yeah.
There's so many like tier 2 candidates right now that the field is flooded with them, but there's no obvious front runner, and I'm hoping that that gets made a bit more clearly. I guess is man, this is the controversy, right?
Yeah.
Will Bernie run again?
No, I think Bernie is not
I agree.
healthy enough, and I think he does better work as a congressman at this point.
I'm not sure about that. I definitely think he is aware of the problems his age presents.
Yeah.
If he did run, though, I don't think he would ever have a better chance.
You think?
Well, no, because there is, assuming Biden doesn't run, right?
Yeah.
There is no Hillary equivalent right now of somebody who already has the name recognition to sort of force their way past the popular vote, like Clinton did, like Biden did.
I argue
Everybody else is already dead or retired.
Kamala? Question mark.
I fucking hope not.
I'm not saying I that's the only other person I can think of that really fits that.
Oh god. My like short list for presidential nominees is I don't even know if I'd have it. Cory Booker, I think, is very talented and competent enough to do the job.
I like
He
that.
is
Yes.
very senior amongst senators, and I would not be surprised to see him make a deep run in the primaries. God, I can't remember her name. California House member right now who is fighting for Dianne Feinstein's California Senate seat currently. She's younger. I can't remember her name. She is very ambitious and very popular where she has ran.
I am trying to pull her up right now because I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I can't remember her name though, because she is young in the political window, right? She's in her I want to say 30s.
God, there's so many Congress people for California.
Would you know it's a big fucking state?
Yes, I am aware.
California has more people than Canada.
No way.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Fuck you. No way. God, you're probably right.
It's not even close. Take a guess. Without looking it up, take a guess. Okay, it is close.
Of the population?
Yeah.
Fuck you. I do not.
It's actually very funny. It pulls up when you Google Canada population. It compares it to California.
Of course it does.
California's it's actually narrowing recently. California's seen a dip in their population, while Canada hasn't. Canada has 38.25 million people as of 2021. California has 39.24 and a significantly larger GDP.
I was about to say they could legitimately be the one state that could get away with running as its own country.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's massive.
Texas, take notes.
This is a good metric. The population of LA makes up 1% of the population of the US.
I'm going to pretend like I didn't hear that.
It's big. It's very big.
No wonder the Red Hot Chili Peppers sing about them all the time. They're just looking for a target audience.
Yeah. I forgot what we were fucking talking about.
We started making fun of the arrest.
Trump and the arrests and all that crap. Yeah. Tuesday, that's the day, right? We'll have to wait and see.
Man, I'm so excited.
Yeah. We have uh quite a bit of entertainment stuff to go through this week, though.
Oh, go on,
Because,
please.
like, most notably, we had the season finale of The Last of Us.
Yes.
I would
I
like to hear your thoughts.
Joel is a fucking bastard.
Mm-hmm.
Um while I do like the idea of Ellie being alive, the man literally fucked everybody because he wanted a daughter.
Yep.
The infamous Orion and Chiral of the Last of Us universe are fucked over because of Joel. No one is safe because of what Joel did. I It was one of those things where I was watching it and I'm like, they're really doing this.
Mm-hmm.
They're really going to let this dude just do the most unlikable thing of all time. Now, the only thing I kind of don't fully understand,
Mm-hmm.
um so Ellie was born infected and that's why she is immune, correct?
That is the gist. They haven't ever really gone into specifics about why it is that she is immune in the game. There was, God, I don't remember what it was called. Maybe it didn't even come to fruition. I know that there was concept of like concept art done at least for a series that was called like American Woman or something like that, with the idea being that it would follow Ellie's mom and explain more of that. But as far as I know, I don't think they really fully did anything with that. Maybe there's like a comic or something. But in the gameplay, for sure, it was never explored.
Interesting. So the game never really sat down and said
Mm.
why she's immune.
No, it is just that she is, and that's kind of the end of it. Because you don't really need more than that, right?
No, I would argue it's important enough for the narrative that she just is.
Yeah. It was cool though to see because we do in the game they make the same parallel from Marlene about how I've been there since she was born, so it is nice to see that more explicitly. And it was also really cool because Ellie's mom in that brief sequence is the actor who played Ellie in the game.
I was wondering that because I heard something about Joel's actor playing like one of
Yeah,
the
he
the
was
cannibals.
the David's henchman,
Yeah,
the guy who Ellie kills on the table.
that's so beautiful.
That's Troy Baker.
That's so cool. I like that a
Yeah, it's
lot.
really cool. I'm trying to think. I'm pretty sure. I know they did Tommy's voice actor. He was the second hand man for the Kansas City Girl. They did a really good job sort of bringing these people back into this project and in small ways, just as a sort of like a nod, a reference. That was welcome.
I saw it as a sign of respect.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yep. Anything else? Any other thoughts before I jump into this? 'Cause
Um,
I have many a thought.
I'm gonna try I'm cycling through the episode in my head.
Mhm. Yep. Yep.
I like the detail that they kind of revealed that Joel's scar was from a suicide attempt.
Yep.
I like
That
that.
was completely new. That was a new addition. That's the kind of thing that there's a lot of little things like that they add through it that are new additions to the story that work but don't really feel adequately explored to me. Like,
Mm.
I like that idea. I just wish there was a little bit more other than the offhand line that they showed at the very beginning where he's first walking with Ellie. And I get what they were going for with it, and I'm not sure how a better way to do it would be. It just didn't feel earned with how abrupt it was.
Mm.
But I do like the idea.
I really enjoyed. I don't know. This is hard because I, as a guy who's never played the games, right?
Hmm? Yep.
It's so weird because we've kind of discussed this before. This is like a more cuddly Joel, And I've heard other
Yep.
people describe the other Joel as more of a murder hobo.
Yes,
Yeah.
which is wrong, but I get what the slander towards the game is absolutely wild to me. And I feel like a lot of it comes from people who haven't played the game.
Okay. Because like I don't think of like that's a bad characterization because like it's an interesting idea. Um.
It's just not really right.
Okay.
He's he does a lot of killing, but most of it is to facilitate the gameplay. It's not meant to be taken in like a literal story sense, you know?
Yeah.
And trying to one-to-one, transcribe it from the video game to the show was clearly how it was never going to be. And in a lot of the discussion that I've seen where there are characterizations made in that kind of way, it doesn't seem to be happening quite in good faith. When people say, I would have liked there to be a bit more action, it doesn't mean I want 9 hours of Joel murdering people. It means that you just want there to be, more portrayal than it was, especially with as short as a lot of these episodes ended up being.
I'm trying to think of more. Um. I honestly think it's so fucking scary. Like Ellie just goes unconscious and she wasn't originally supposed to wake up. I'm guessing in the games that Ellie was just going to be dissected until they found the cure for her from her. Does that sound about right? Or
No, it's pretty close. The In terms of like beat for beat, everything that happened once you meet up with Ellie and Joel in this episode did happen in the game,
okay,
with the exceptions being pretty much just the note about Joel having attempted suicide.
okay. Hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's some smaller beats that were changed, but like in terms of large moments, it's all very similar. They do talk about, one very small but important change that happens that makes the discussion around it a bit less, or I guess a bit more definitive. In the game, the cordyceps are described as growing on the brain, where in the show, they describe it as being growing in the brain. So that is a change that makes it much more explicit that if Ellie undergoes this surgery, she will die.
Okay.
In the game, that is very heavily implied, but with the phrasing that they use, it is not guaranteed. Whereas in that one, there's not really any question, and they make that clear.
I guess that's really all my thoughts I can think of right now that are
Mm-hmm.
important. So
No.
go on, please hit me.
I thought that this was by far the weakest episode of the series.
Really?
I did. Yep. And a lot of that might be that I just kind of know what's going to happen because I know the story.
Yeah.
But the moments that happened in it, there was three things. Given how short this one is, I was very disappointed that of seeing what they changed, because this was the shortest episode yet. And for being the series finale, I was quite frustrated with that. And there's a lot of small things throughout it that build up as it goes that are just, in my mind, wrong. And the first one happens right at the fucking start with the boggle shit. I found that so jarring and so out of character, that entire conversation around it, that I have to assume Boggle must have just given them all the fucking money for that brief moment to be included there.
I do not remember anything about the boggle shit. Oh my god.
Oh
What
my
is this?
god. I can count yourself lucky. I was so put off by it. There's a very brief moment when at the very start, when it cuts from the little prequel bit to Ellie and Joel, Ellie is on the side of the road looking at a sign, and Joel is calling her name, and she's not hearing him, and she kind of goes like, "What? Sorry," and focuses again.
Mm-hmm.
And what Joel is trying to get her attention about is that he found a Boggle game when he was looking through like the cars or some shit. And he says something about how he's like, you know Boggle? And she's like, what? Because like, yeah, what? And he says, it's a word game. Maybe it's something you can finally beat me at, or some shit like that.
That is so stupid. How did I not remember that?
Yeah, I wish I could forget it because I was in the game. That exact scene plays out in the same way, except it's Joel getting her attention to point out a road sign indicating that there's a hospital coming up on the highway they're walking along,
Okay.
which is much more important than fucking Boggle.
I don't know,
It's just
man.
like
Have you played a good game
it's
of
just so
Boggle?
it's so silly and it feels so just like out of character for the whole thing. It feels too lighthearted. Like, oh yeah, here's some Boggle. Let's go play some Boggle after Ellie.
That's
I didn't like
so
it.
funny.
And the little things, it was just lots of little things where it's just like, oh, why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? When Ellie is getting the ladder for Joel and she spots the giraffes the first time, in the show, they I have no fucking idea why, but they had her just go, whoa, and it's not convincing at all. And it kind of carried on with the theme for me in this episode, where I don't know if they did even have the director listed, but I really felt like the director of this last episode wasn't really trying especially hard to get the best performances out here, because there's a lot of things in contrast to the game that are just like, in my mind, objectively worse performances when you look at the side by side. And it's just like these really weak moments where it's a combination of like a script that needed like a half-second more pass, or just like make it the same as what they already did before, right? Like, you don't need to change everything. Small things like that built up a lot through the episode, where it's just like, oh, why'd you change that? In the hospital, when Joel is breaking out from his being walked out of the building and he kills the two guys, um in the game, he has a quick little torture moment where he shoots the guy in the chest, pushes him up on the wall, and he asks him, where is Ellie? Basically, where is the surgery happening? And the guy, you know, refuses at first, shoots him again, tells him where it is, and Joel murders him in cold blood after. And it's a little thing, but changing it so that Joel sees where the pediatric ward is on the sign, and then just outright kills the guy. It's a small change, but I feel like it's not as effective. And it's just, yeah, little things, right? Little thing here, little thing there, little thing there, and it just kind of takes me out of it personally.
No, I
The
can
big
see that.
thing that I was really not fond of, I actually did it. I made a checklist for things that I wanted to see in this episode.
Again.
I did, yeah. I was curious, like, all right, what is my
Okay.
expectation? Doesn't meet it.
Yes.
And the big thing that wasn't met was how the Fireflies come across Ellie and Joel. In the show, Ellie and Joel are walking through the Fedra triage area, and the soldiers just kind of walk up behind him and throw a flashbang and knock him out. In the game, Ellie and Joel are trying to traverse a flooded tunnel, and in doing it, the platform they're walking on collapses, and Ellie appears to have drowned. Joel collects her, pulls her out of the water, and is trying to resuscitate her when the Fedra guys, responding to the noise that just happened, find them and knocks Joel out. And, it's a small change, but it's a really strong performance in that scene from Troy Baker, and having it completely removed for such a short episode felt bad. Like,
Okay.
I feel like they could have pretty easily included that and still, it's like 5 minutes. Show them. It's the continuing of the theme that's been throughout it, where they seem to have cut almost all of the gameplay elements at all costs. And I don't feel like it's for the better. You can include more than a brief reference to the way that the game handled things, because the way the game worked was by incorporating the story into the gameplay. That's what made it a good game. And when you remove the gameplay, you also remove those opportunities for story beats.
I see what you mean by that, because a lot of this does feel like there are. I think I've been saying this since day one. I feel like I can tell where gameplay begins and ends a lot of the time. And
Yeah,
it's a lot of like trying to find like when do the cutscenes happen, you know?
pretty much. They do a phenomenal job adapting the visuals. And it does really feel like they didn't know how to do the gameplay, so they just decided not to.
Mm-hmm.
And that the cutscenes were good enough. And it largely is. It tells a very competent story, and it does it well. But it's just like the uncanny valley of doing an adaptation where it's so similar that it feels off, stilted by what it doesn't have.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, I'm curious what your like number ranking out of 10 would be for the series as a whole.
For the series as a whole. Now, I'm going to do this again. As someone who's never played the games,
Yes.
this is all fresh to me, right?
Yep.
I think The Last of Us is a very good show, but it has different styles of good, per se. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's prestige television good, like the Bill and Frank episode,
Yes.
and then there are like little nuggets of really good shit. But at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, I'm not going to pretend like it's a perfect show.
Mm-hmm.
It is very much one of those shows that when they don't know what to do, they kind of like flounder a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't pretend like every scene's a hit or every episode's a hit. Like
Yep.
the Sam and Henry stuff probably could have used a lot more development because I felt like that was totally unnecessary in the larger storyline. Um,
Mm-hmm.
for a show with infected zombies all over the place, we've only seen them like prominently twice. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I would have liked a little bit more of that. I felt like they were really using like a get out of jail free card by adapting them real well and having a high budget for those suits, but not using them
Yeah.
that much. You know, it felt like
Mm-hmm.
they had like cake, but we could only stare at the cake. We couldn't eat the
Mm-hmm.
cake too with those suits. I really fucking love the clicker suits.
Mm-hmm.
Um, overall, I think it is a strong. Well, it's a good 8, and on a bad day, it's a 7.5, but a very strong 7.5 out of 10.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can agree with that almost completely. I put it at a 7 for me.
Okay.
The main problems that I have with it is that, like you said, I think the like the it tries to have its cake and eat it thing is very apt, where they toy with a lot of really good, well executed ideas, but not to conclusion. Where they start the show is at its best when it's doing new things. I don't think it's at all exaggeration to say that the Bill and Frank episode is by far the best.
Oh yeah, the Bill and
It
Frank.
is it elevates itself to something above the rest of the series.
For me, the Bill and Frank episode is so special
Mm-hmm.
because they take an idea and they roll with it to its natural conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, you have stuff like the clickers, which I wanted some really nice horror scenes with them. I could
Yeah.
picture some really good horror. I thought
Mm-hmm.
we would get something really good with the clickers in terms of horror for this show, but
Yep. Yep.
alas, we did not. Um,
I was really hoping for the same. There's
mhm.
just for being an adaptation of an action game, there's very little suspense.
Yeah, I thought they could do a lot more with a lot of the stuff they did. And like there wasn't a time where I felt like they fully expended all their resources of like an idea to its natural conclusion, like you said.
Yep.
Um, unless we're talking about Bill and Frank. Bill and
Yeah.
Frank, that is a fucking good story.
Mm-hmm.
It has a very
Yeah, it
cohesive.
tells it's very complete.
Yeah, there's no way you can alter that story and not make it worse.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, and it comes back. They start off with so sorry, Bill and Frank.
Hmm.
It works really well on multiple fronts because even for people who've played the game, because it's new, you are just as much waiting to see what happens next as anybody else with because you don't know.
Hmm.
And that very much gets lost after that episode where they add a couple of cool new ideas, particularly with Sam being mute.
Hmm.
It's cool. It works. It leads to some interesting payoffs.
I just
But
wanted. Sorry, go on.
Otherwise, it's kind of, it doesn't really have anything fresh.
With Sam.
And
Sorry.
yes,
With Sam as the character, I
yes.
really fucking love the idea of taking him through this infected tunnel, and clickers can only click. So that's when you know they're nearby, because they have to use echolocation. And you have a deaf character who can't tell when the fucking clickers are near. That is such a scary idea. And they did nothing with it. I would have loved to see it. He's a cute kid. It makes a lot more tension because you don't want to see anything bad happen to the cute kid. And like, I would have just absolutely adored seeing them do something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In my mind, there's kind of like 3, maybe even 4 core aspects of it, where you have the new content, particularly with the flashbacks.
Mhm.
There is the core story that they're trying to tell, and then there is the more physical adversity of doing the long traversal that they're trying to do, going from Boston to Utah.
Mhm.
And not focusing on any one of those fully detracts from the rest of it, where they clearly spent the most on like the core story. But by starting with these flashbacks and new content and not letting that continue on to anything fuller feels incomplete. And I would have loved to have seen like a monster of the week kind of thing, where there's like some adversity that they have to overcome. And they started to do that in the first couple episodes, right? In
Yeah,
the
yeah.
first episode,
Yeah.
you have Joel, Tommy, and Sarah fleeing the start of the infection, culminating in Sarah dying. In the second episode, you have Joel, Ellie, and Tess making their way to leave the quarantine zone and getting overrun by the clickers in the end.
Mhm.
And then it hits Bill and Frank, which is a phenomenal piece on its own. And then after that, the story kind of falters between different ideas. You know, particularly spending 2 episodes in Kansas City in particular with such a weak payoff for it felt like pretty bad mismanagement. Where, given how little gets built up there other than Ellie meets someone her age and then that person dies and that's sad, doesn't quite, the payoff isn't there.
You know what I would really liked with Kansas City?
Mm.
So like
What's that?
we've addressed the Rose in the room with that episode. Rose's actress, her character is not a bad idea. But what I would have liked is they could have developed her a lot more, because like she feels like just a mustache twirling villain at the end of the day. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what I would have liked is that we've kind of established Fedra is just a fascist government in this world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when they take down Fedra and they kind of leave this power vacuum in Kansas City, I would have loved it if they did a commentary of just one flavor of fascism getting replaced with another, and that would be her character, which they kind of do, but they don't really do anything with it.
Yeah,
because like
they just don't have enough time.
Yeah, like they could have developed. I don't know where they could have found space for this. Those episodes have simultaneously so much going on and nothing going on at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So The Last of Us as a game, as the source material, is only 2 parts long. There's part 1 and there's part 2. And that's all that exists yet. And as far as I know, there's no imminent plans for a part 3 to happen. It probably will at some point, and it's probably in development now, but it doesn't even have, an official announcement, let alone a release date, right? But The Last of Us TV show on HBO has already been confirmed for a 3rd season now. I would like...
What?
I know. I expect what it is that they're just taking part 2 and they're splitting it in half because it is a longer game. It's just, there is more to go through. There's more detail to it. It's just longer, right? So that's what I expect. They're probably going to split it into a part 1, a first half and a second half, which in the way that the game splits also makes sense. So Get ready for The Last of Us season 2 to end on a cliffhanger, because it probably will if they go the way I think. But in terms of production schedules, I think that would make sense. And then it also gives Naughty Dog the time, another 4 years, say, to have The Last of Us Part 3, whatever that might look like, or whatever their next project within the same world might look like, time to be developed and come out at the pace that they tend to work. What I would really like, though, I would have loved for them to have spent far less time in Kansas City showing us the villain, other than at a very surface level to show, Sam and Henry's story, and instead made a spinoff. Give me 9 episodes in Kansas City showing how bad Fedra is, how I can't remember the actress's name, Rose's brother,
Yeah.
who gets, handed over by Henry, how they build their resistance to Fedra in Kansas City and eventually overcome it, resulting in her, Rose, becoming just as bad as the people she replaced. You can have that as its own contained series and have it be really good, even if we already know how it ultimately concludes, because there is some strong themes and motivations there that they just didn't have the time to explore.
Yeah, I agree. I think we could have had a much grander story there, and sadly, there wasn't enough room for it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So yeah, I personally give it a 7 out of 10 overall. Um, I the thing that I can't stress enough though is that the visual side of it, I have to look up. Let me look up real quick who did like the artistic direction, because it is 10 out of 10 throughout.
It is a beautiful show. I was really scared going into it because I'm sick of apocalypses, but
Mm-hmm.
the show has this very. It's not apocalyptic 'cause everything is still being used. It's just in shittier condition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is very much post-apocalyptic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm very curious who if they could have it here, cast and crew. I want to know who did the direction for this, because it's very good. They clearly know what they're doing.
I just looked it up. There's like 10 million episodes. I mean, $10 million per episode for the budget,
Mm-hmm.
which that's pretty cool. I don't know if I see $10 million per episode, but
John Pano did all 9 episodes series production, and looks like Don McCauley and Callum Webster did the vast majority of the art direction.
okay.
Like, can't give them credit enough for the work they did. It looks like The Last of Us, very much so. They clearly know what they're doing. Also, shout outs to Paul Healy and Cynthia Ann Summers, the set decoration and costume designers. Fucking
Yes.
phenomenal work. They knocked it out of the park without question.
Do you think it's the design of the show that makes it feel better as The Last of Us?
I don't think I can say that yet. This last 2 weeks, I have actually played through The Last of Us Part 1 again for the PS4
Mm-hmm.
in anticipation of the PC release of the top to bottom remaster that they did coming out in a week and a half. And when it comes out, I plan to play the shit out of it. I think compared to, like the PS3 era graphics, it absolutely helps. And that is going to be the vast majority of the perspective that people have on it. The remake is phenomenal, but is not what most people think of when they think of The Last of Us.
Have you seen that they started playing Last of Us ads for the games on the show specifically?
Interesting. No, I hadn't.
Yeah, I did a rewatch because I wanted to see how everything flowed together.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting. It was just
Mm-hmm.
interesting to see those ads start showing up.
Yeah, I highly recommend it if people have the chance to. If you have even if you can only play the PS3 version, right? Like PlayStation 3s are fucking cheap now. It is one of the best games of all time, and even if the gameplay is clunky by modern standards, the design of it is timeless from like a layout and puzzle perspective. Where yes, it is very basic and probably not quite even. It's probably not fair to even call it good in terms of like stealth mechanics or actual gunplay because it's a 10-year-old game. But it's like going back and playing Super Mario World, right?
Mm-hmm.
It looks like 90s crap. It plays like 90s crap, but it's got something to it that still works decades later because they did it right the first time. So, can't recommend it enough. It is a phenomenal game.
But Persona 5.
But Persona 5, it is, the best thing that I can say about it is that it's not Persona 5.
That's so funny.
God, Persona games are so long. Persona fans are another fucking breed.
So I have bad news for you, my friend.
Mm.
I played Persona 5 and I kind of liked it a lot.
Oh, they're great games.
I played
No
Persona.
doubt.
I'm playing through Persona 3 now.
How many hours do you have in Persona 5?
In Persona 5 specifically?
Yes.
Oh, fuck.
Is it triple digits?
Yes.
Yeah. That's the problem I have with all the Persona games, is that they are phenomenal. I just don't have enough attention for something like that.
The game was so long, I naturally got to level 99 without having to grind.
I believe it. I totally believe it.
I'm in Persona 3 and I am at 35 hours in, and I cannot
You're
see
almost through the tutorial.
Yeah, I cannot see an ending in sight, and I'm too scared to like look up at guide to see how much left I have. And then what's up?
I say, wasn't it Persona? Was it Persona 5 that they were DMCA striking people on Twitch for showing past a certain day?
Yes.
For spoilers.
For spoilers, yes.
Yeah. And the fact that was like met by the average Persona fan is just like, oh yeah, I get that. I feel like that's a very good example of where the fandom is, where it's like, oh, you're abusing the copyright system to make sure that spoilers don't go around. That's fair and reasonable.
Dude, it is like a cult. Like I'll say this as a guy who's like just getting into the series. These games are cultish as fuck. Like the devotion you need for them is the kind of stuff that cults are made out of.
For sure.
Yeah. But oh my god, they're such good JRPGs. Oh, I get the sweats just thinking about them, honey.
No doubt. Let's talk some movies.
Movies, go on.
We have half an hour. I want to start. We'll get to them. There's only like 2 new releases, so we'll get to that at the end. I watched 2 movies for the first time this week that I want to talk about.
Yes,
I think they're remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with a quick one. We talked about this more on the show in the past. Belle, animated movie. It's Japan animation from Mamoru Hosoda, writer and director. It is good, but I was very disappointed by it. I was really looking forward to this. I went online, I looked up some of like the early impressions, and it seems that that's not uncommon. There's a lot of people that are just like, wow, I was really looking forward to this. What the hell happened in the third act? Belle, as the name implies, starts off as a bit of a retelling of the classic tale of Beauty and the Beast. And for a very long part of its runtime, it leads you pretty intentionally down the story beat understanding of that being the intention. And where the confusion comes in is that in the third act, they completely throw out the traditional Beauty of the Beast narrative and instead change it out for an analogy about of abuse by parents of their children and how that is portrayed in other ways. And rather than the Beast being Belle's, romantic interest, it is instead turned around in a much more literal sense where Belle saves Beast from their abusive father.
I'm
And if
so
that sounds
confused.
confusing,
Yeah.
it's because it is. And it doesn't really get better once you get into the details of it. It is very sudden, where they clearly like I would have much rather they stuck with the expected story and had the sort of reveal of who is this horrible beast in this virtual world been the very obvious love interest of the main character in real world, in the real life.
Hmm.
It would have been tropey and expected, but it would have, you know, there's a reason that Hans Christian Andersen is still one of the foremost fairy tale tellers of all time. Some 300-ish years later, he did some stuff right. And Disney helped by popularizing it, but this doesn't work from like a concept standpoint. It leaves you feeling like you've been lied to for the first two acts as they progress beat for beat down the typical Beauty and the Beast storyline, just completely upended in the final bit.
Do they have a Gaston?
They do.
Oh
Yeah.
God, that's
It's
just even
like
more hurt.
it's like the server admin of the VR world where he is trying to unveil who the beast is because this beast guy is going around. They allude
Dude's
to
out
it
there
briefly,
trying to
but
dox him. Sorry.
yeah, literally. The idea is that the beast apparently was part of like underground fighting ring type stuff, and because of something that happened with the way that he fought, it was like corrupting people's data and fucking up their clients, kind of thing. So that's why he was like a villain, was that people knew him for that, where he would fight people and like effectively digitally kill them by resetting their accounts.
Yeah.
And that was why the Gaston stand-in was trying to hunt him down.
You see, this is a problem I have with like all these online world narratives. They're really
Yeah.
cool, like aesthetically, but like it's hard to have
Oh
like
yeah.
any sense of risk or any sense of like conflict because lots of internet shit is just not made to go that way to have actual consequences on the real world.
The anime, it's a real shame because the music as like individual pieces are excellent. The animation in isolation is phenomenal. There's really cool ideas that they're doing using the animation in this digital world. I'm gonna send you a picture here. There's a bit towards the end where after the sort of turn in the third act has come around and they have figured out who the beast is, they're trying to then specifically figure out where in the real world the beast is so that they can find him and stop this emotional abuse that this kid's father is inflicting on him. And to do that, the main character reveals herself in the digital world to be herself. She's no longer her persona, she's just a normal schoolgirl.
Did you just say persona?
I mean, they do use that term. But yeah,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
yeah, but yeah, there's this really cool moment in the story where she is singing in the digital world, appearing as herself. And when people talk in the world, they have these little orange things that pop up in front of them that like shows this person is talking. And it's a really fucking cool moment where it's a bit played out and cliche, but the visual element of it is she is singing, and then this massive crowd in front of her also starts singing, and their little orange dots start to pop up all together, and it just looks really fucking good.
It does look pretty based off the screenshot you're giving me. It's like a
It is
cloud of
just,
gold.
it's very beautifully done.
Yes.
It's just stuck tied into a story that doesn't serve it very well. And that's a shame. In addition, on a surprisingly more positive note, I watched a horrible movie yesterday.
Go on.
Michael Bay's Ambulance, starring Jake fucking Gyllenhaal. Wow. This is a movie that has an 88% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. 88. I think that's as good of a sign as any that you can't take audience scores seriously. And even with that said, the like audience synopsis still has like an underhandedness to it. If you're looking for an action-packed movie that doesn't rely on deep dialogue, complex characters, or even a story that makes a ton of sense, Ambulance delivers.
Go on, please tell
And
me more.
that is probably the most accurate telling of what is like. So, what is Ambulance? The idea of Ambulance is that there's two brothers, Will Sharp and Danny Sharp. Danny Sharp is played by Jake Gyllenhaal. Will Sharp by um, Yahya Abdul Mateen II. Jake Gyllenhaal, obviously very white. Yahya, obviously very black. So it leads to this, dynamic between them where they are in the literal sense brothers. They grew up together under the same family, but people don't view them that way because of how visually different they look. Gyllenhaal's character Danny is a lifelong criminal. Will is a former Marine who has come on hard times after no longer serving, experiencing serious medical debt that his family has incurred. He has a wife and two children. He has a wife and child. His wife is the one who is sick. They're trying to do these treatments. The insurance has decided not to cover them, so they're now being saddled with hundreds of thousands of dollars in medical debt. Will, without anywhere else to turn, goes to his brother Danny, trying to get help making some money. Danny says that the only job that he has right now is a bank heist that they're about to pull off, and it's way bigger than anything that Will wants to do, but it's the only thing that he has right now. He has all of his endeavors put into this and nothing else. So if he wants to, get some money, this is going to be the only way that it's going to happen.
Okay.
Will agrees reluctantly. They go on this bank heist. It starts off going pretty much exactly to plan, except for a pair of cops that were at the bank earlier, a more senior one and a younger one. They're talking. The younger one expresses he has an interest in one of the tellers that they saw at the bank earlier. He thought, maybe there was something a bit more there, but when they were talking with this teller at the bank, but he chickened out and he didn't do anything. And the senior one's just like, nah, dude, I'm gonna get you hooked up. We're going back to the bank and we're gonna get you this girl. So he turns around, basically shoves this new guy through the bank doors and forces him to come into the bank as they are doing this robbery in progress. From there, things go wrong. The bank heist ends up being discovered, and in the process, this younger cop gets shot in as that happens. Danny and Will, now that the heist has been blown, all the rest of their guys get shot and killed. They're trying to find a way out of the bank as it's being surrounded. An ambulance is called for the younger cop that gets shot. They
So
hijack
stupid.
that ambulance as it's leaving the bank and are able to escape the immediate threat through that. So now they're in this ambulance. They have the EMT and the shot cop, and they are on like the slowest high speed pursuit in the history of cinema. And this is like 20 minutes into the movie now. And then the next hour and a half is them in this ambulance trying to make sure that the cop in the back doesn't die while also trying to figure out a way to get like the 15 police cars and 2 helicopters above them off their tails. It's completely ridiculous, featuring things like open chest surgery using a hair clip to stop bleeding of a
What?
major artery in an ambulance that's moving.
I really hope they don't
There's
hit a pothole.
there's a pimp car that gets outfitted with a chain gun.
And you said Michael Bay wrote this, right?
Michael Bay directed it
Oh my god.
and produced it. And most importantly, more drone footage than you will ever see in any other movie,
I find that hard to believe.
to like a nauseating extent, where they have all of these shots of like it's almost exclusively the ambulance going under a bridge or into a tunnel and the drone doing this like overhead spin flip thing from above it to follow it down underneath whatever it's going under. They do that like 10 times, and it's never not disorienting, and it's also never really effective at doing anything. It's like the most stale shot ever, but whoa, spinny drone action! It's now exciting, so they have to include it.
Hmm.
It is absolutely absurd and stupid and very fun to laugh at, not with. So, yeah. Good movie to watch, with a group and just laugh as it goes completely off the rails.
Did you? Speaking of movies to laugh at with a group, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The original founder of this genre, almost, The Room, with
Yeah.
Tommy Wiseau.
Yes.
I found this out fairly recently. They're remaking that. Hey, would you
Why?
like to guess who the main lead is?
I think I've heard of this, but I can't remember. Please go ahead.
Fucking Saul Goodman himself, Bob
Yeah.
Odenkirk.
Why?
I don't know, but
Who
it's
asked for this?
they're doing it for charity. Um,
Oh, okay. I guess that's fair. That's a pretty good reason.
they also are having Bob act it out as a serious role and not as comedy.
It could be, it has the potential to be something interesting. It will certainly be interesting as like a point of comparison to see like, you know, does the, quintessential bad movie, if you recreate it beat for beat with people knowing what they're doing, is it a good movie or is it still bad? That's interesting. And being a charity thing, that's cool.
Yeah, I think Bob Odenkirk's a very good actor. Um,
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
yeah. What are you talking about? You haven't fucking seen Better Call Saul. Don't you dare try co-opting our
Yeah, because
culture.
Bob Odenkirk has only ever been in one thing.
He has. Thank you. No, I'm kidding. Um, so I think it'd be very interesting to see his range of what an experienced actor versus what Tommy was trying to do. Um, how much of it is Tommy's writing versus how much of it is Tommy's acting. You know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm sure it will be perfectly serviceable.
Yep.
Yep. But back to Ambulance.
Yeah. I don't recommend it. The only reason that we watched it last night was that it was free on Amazon Prime.
Oh, that's sad.
And for some reason, it has positive reviews. So it's just like, oh, it's an action movie. It's Jake Gyllenhaal. It's got like an 80%. Yeah, why not? How bad can it be? And it turns out pretty fucking bad.
You know what? I would love to see like someone who poured their heart into that movie because it's like their first movie project ever, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like it's something that they're very proud of. Like they may have done something as simple as like gripping the camera and making sure the shots were even, but like they poured
Mhm.
their heart and soul making it the best possible movie ever, just to see their work go free to Amazon.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's
Really interesting thing that I found out in having watched it, because I was just like, Michael Bay did this. What has he done other than Transformers? All he makes is crap. Um, Turns out, and this is like, it makes so much sense in hindsight. He made, most notably, Armageddon with Bruce Willis,
mm-hmm.
which I feel like the world has just kind of forgotten that he was involved with that, and that's probably for the best because he doesn't deserve the credit for it.
Correct.
Um, he also made both of the first two Bad Boys movies. And looking at this movie through the lens of like Michael Bay wants to make another Bad Boys, but no one will give him the money to do it, makes a lot of sense. Where they had to like twist this around because there's so much like bad tongue in cheek kind of crap where it's like trying to be funny and it's just not. It doesn't work. That would make so much more sense in like a Bad Boys kind of thing. Like flip the roles in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's no longer bank robbers trying to run away. You have the bad boys, the proverbial bad boys driving this ambulance with like some particular gangster in the back trying to run away from other gangsters in this pursuit. And then it makes a whole lot more sense because then they're the good guys. So when they make these really dumb, shitty quips, you can kind of appreciate it because they're supposed to be likable. They're not actual fucking grand larceny criminals that have probably killed 20 people already this day. So why the hell do they care about the one guy in the back of their car? That kind of thing, right? So there is that very obvious internal conflict, and then it kind of just sort of makes sense when you have that perspective of just like, oh, he's trying to do that again. But yeah, it's not good. It's not great. We have some new movies as well this week.
Oh,
2 of them, to be precise, that I have pulled up here at least. More notably, the Shazam sequel. It is as much of a movie that I forgot it existed until I saw that it was out this week.
Shazam is always one of those superhero properties. I'm like, yeah, this is what people who aren't into superhero properties think all superhero movies are.
Maybe. The first one was, I haven't seen it, but I've always heard good things about the first one.
Really?
Yeah.
I haven't seen the first one, but I haven't heard good things about it, believe it or not, which is weird.
Interesting.
Yeah.
This one's not doing better. So I feel like that is about all that needs to be said for it. You know, regardless of what you thought of the first one, the second one isn't as good as that one was. So the other movie that I think is actually kind of interesting, it's apparently only in theaters right now, and I wouldn't want to pay like as like a theater thing. I wouldn't pay to see this on a ticket. As like, oh, this is already on HBO Max thing, I would watch the shit out of this. There's a Willem Dafoe solo movie where it is just Willem Dafoe. It is called Inside. Willem Dafoe plays the character Nemo, an art thief who becomes trapped in a New York penthouse after his heist doesn't go as planned. Locked inside with nothing but priceless works of art, he must use all of his cunning and invention to survive.
That
And it
sounds
is apparently
good.
It is Willem Dafoe locked in a New York penthouse. He has a walkie-talkie that the owner of the penthouse is talking to him at, and the rest of it is just him trying to get out, going kind of insane in the process.
That slaps. That's a really good concept.
Yeah. It's not doing great.
Oh.
Which doesn't surprise me too much because it is pretty high concept, but I would still very much like to see this at some point. It sounds very interesting.
You know what it reminds me of? Like those one-man shows you see on off-Broadway.
Yeah.
Yeah. That it just sells me on it. I think Willem Dafoe is genuinely a great actor, and I would love to see him like just be by himself. Anything else of note?
That's all that I have.
Fair enough. So now that we've completed The Last of Us, what are we going to do till the next season shows up?
Given that it doesn't have a date yet, I would recommend playing the game.
Oh, damn. Yeah, they still haven't really fucking done that thing where, you know, the PC port's coming out soon, but they don't really advertise it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've seen it only advertised for, like, the PS5 on the... Why would they advertise the PS5 version when it's hard to get?
Actually, the PS5 is not that hard to get anymore.
Really?
I was looking this up because I was like, in the run-up to this, I was thinking like, man, I just got my tax return. Wonder if I can just buy a PS5. And it turns out you can. It's still like $500, and I didn't think that was worth it. But you can just buy one at Best Buy right now.
Oh, shit. That's good, though. I'm glad we finally got past that hurdle.
Yeah.
Here we are 3 years into its lifespan, and we finally can get the thing.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy perspective to think about it as. It is like 2.5 years old.
I think the PS5 is going to be haunted by that supply chain issue for like all of history at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless, do we have any more segments we have planned for the show?
That's all that I have. Pretty sure.
Beautiful. Fun story about fucking the PS5. Not fucking the PS5. I went to go see our old roommate Chancel last night. Motherfucker still had to wait in a giant Amazon queue to get a PS5 because he just got one. according to him, it took him like 2 weeks of like emailing to get in that queue as well. So I'm not too sure what the scenario is. I just find that absolutely hilarious that you can get one at a Best Buy fairly easily now.
Yeah, I don't know how long it actually takes to get there. Like right now, I'm seeing on the PlayStation Direct website, it looks like at least you can just buy one for retail.
Good.
$4.99.
Good.
Which, yeah, that's good. I think it's relatively new, recent. That's actually where it is right now. As far as I know, at least. I remember as recently as like a month ago, there was still like regular updates going up on Twitter of like, yeah, you're in line here. They're planning on doing a wave of PS5 releases on whatever date, whatever time. Get in line, kind of stuff.
Yeah, I remember the same thing, especially with Cheap Ass Gamer.
Yep.
Go follow Cheap Ass Gamer, everybody. It's very, very good. Good shit. But besides that, I'm Infamous Ryan, and I've been a Schmo.
I'm Cairo, and I've been a Schmo.
And this has been the Two Schmoes Show.